Sally goes to the restaurant owners, mentions the situation, and the restaurant owners, of course, are kind of saddened by this. They're like, they didn't know, they didn't realize the situation, but they do mention it's still booked. But lo and behold, as this happens, who shows up and meets Sally for the first time? But Honey. That's right, Honey the cat returns in the backup story. And Sally's like, hey, I'm finally glad to meet you in person, and that maybe she can lend a hand. And basically, Honey, being Honey, makes a bargain with Sally. She says something along the lines of, I've got a table booked here tonight, but I'd be happy to trade it for a royal design job. That's right. Honey is basically willing to trade her reservation, her table that she's reserved at that restaurant, to Sally for the lady for Lucie's mother's birthday for a royal design job. And Sally says, hey, give us the table and I'll let you wardrobe my entire coronation whenever that happens. And Honey's like, ooh, you got a deal. So, and this panel right here, let me check what time I have, how much time I've gotten here. Okay, it's going to be in two parts, obviously, but this panel right here is, trying to get in focus here. This panel right here is worth it right there. I love it. I really love it. That panel right there, it's, it's worth it. I think if I can get what she's saying, there we go. That panel right there, it's worth it. So anyway, next thing we see on board the Sky Patrol, and she asks Rhoda if they live there, and Rhoda says, well, and Rhoda basically says, hopefully not for too long. Well, basically, not for too long. And she basically asks Rhoda if they live there on the Sky Patrol, and Rhoda goes on to say, well, not for very long, but but live, work, fight, play, and construct just about anything. And basically he ends up constructing and setting the ring to exactly what she needs. And she mentions that it's gorgeous and that he's brilliant. And he says, yeah, I guess first time's the charm for him. So, yeah. So later on, we get another scene with Sally meeting up with the UFAF Sword of Michael, or Captain Daniel Murrer of the UFAF Sword of Michael. And basically, they're there to kind of check up on things as far as like the Dark Gaia monsters are concerned. You know, at night when the reports are that in the comics that at night the Dark Gaia monsters come out and everything. And you know, that's the reason they're there. And Rhoda kind of mumbles as well, and an important dinner party apparently. And Sally has to mention, hey, you're proud of that ring. And Rhoda's like, yeah, still. It's like, Rhoda's proud of what he did with the ring, making the ring what it is, but he's still not happy at the fact that they kind of are being distracted from the mission. And basically the reason that they're there is to find out what's going through. And the captain goes on to say that they've joined the garrison here, so it's mostly secure, but outside the city is a different story. And that they have so many refugees fall back behind to the old walls, and that it's been basically difficult to maintain peace and order, and then every night morale drops. Notice, and then every night, no morale drops noticeably, like the night is crushing them, but they make it through because they know Sonic and the Freedom Fighters are out there, and that they know that they're going to fix the planet. And that Sally thanks him for the update, the info, and that she says, hopefully we won't keep you waiting much longer. And you get this panel with Rotor, kind of like with his back turned, looking back at Sally, like who's looking over the ship. Yep, and you can kind of tell Rotor, he wants to get this done. He wants to get this mission done so they can get back to having a peaceful life. So basically our story starts to conclude with the dinner. Basically the next thing we see is the family out with the dinner. Basically the next thing we see is Sally and Rotor out with the family at the dinner and stuff, and the mother is in tears. She's happy about getting the ring, saying it's the best birthday present a mother could ask for. And then Rhoda points out something along the lines of, let me get back to that next bit. Let me get there. I can get this one though. But Rhoda points out that this wasn't just a personal issue for Lucille. This party is for you too. And he points this out to Sally, who mentions that she is guilty as charged, because here's what's interesting, and this is the first time we ever find out about this. Sally basically says that, because Rhoda basically points out that that it wasn't just a personal issue for Lucille, for Luce, but it was also a party for Sally. And Sally says she's guilty as charged, and mentions that and apologizes and knows that it was selfish, but she never got a chance to know her mother. All she has are vague memories. So at least we're getting some kind of indication of Alicia, even though it's silhouetted. And it looks like a pool, maybe representing tears or something like that. We just get a silhouette of her mom there. So, and that she wanted Lucille to have this moment with her mother, something to hold on to forever. And then we get a flashback of Rhoda with his mom, and he's in tears because it looks like his mom's in a hospital bed dying. And he goes on to basically says, no, you made the right call, and that he keeps forgetting that they're not just fixing a planet, they're fixing everyone, and she thanks Rhoda for acknowledging that. And he goes on, so after that little discovery, which is very interesting, he goes on to ask her how she got the table anyway, and she kind of jestedly, sheepishly says, let's just say I've got an interesting call to make to her. That basically she's basically sheepishly saying, let's just say I got a call to make to Daddy tomorrow. A very interesting call to make to Daddy tomorrow. So basically, she's saying that she's got to call up her dad and mention, oh, by the way, Dad, the way we got this other guy, Key, the reason we were able to get 5 all of a sudden, I made a deal with Honeycat, or something like that. So basically, she's got to talk to him about the deal she made with Honey. And Luce goes on to say that she can't thank him enough, that they really saved the day. And Rhoda says, oh, we were happy to do it. We're freedom fighters after all. And Luce goes on to say that she was frazzled, basically so overwhelmed with the plans for the dinner that she never thought to ask what Odo had sent them to or sent them to her about. And as they're saying this, Rotor's saying, "Hell, we were happy to help." Sally gives him this little smirky look, like, "Yeah, right. Now you say it." But as she mentioned, but basically after that, Sally mentions to her, "We are gathering the Gaia keys in a plan to save the world. You're the guardian of the Sun Key, right?" And all of a sudden it dawns on Lucille, "Holy shoot!" Like, "Oh my gosh!" And it kind of jumps on. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, Lucille's like, "Oh my gosh! Hold on!" And basically Lucy, she bolts from the table and she's like, "Oh my gosh! I'm so concerned about," and she's basically saying, "Oh my gosh! I'm so concerned about a birthday party and all that, and the world's falling apart. Here, let me go get the key for you." And they're trying to tell her, no, sit down. And Sally says, "We've already been through this already. Trust us. Enjoy the moment so you can savor it after the world is saved." And basically it ends with Sally and Rotor flying off on their hoverboards with both Gaia keys, with both halves of the Gaia key in check. So, yeah, and I do apologize if this has gone into 2 parts or 3 parts. I do apologize about that, but it's just so much to take in here. But like I said at the beginning, it seems to me that the first 2 parts here, these first that, hold on. It seems to me that the first story was, basically both these stories in this issue, like I said, for probably the next backup stories in the next few issues, are like the calm before the storm. I can't really say much about what the main story is going to be like, but I can say it's kind of like a calm before the storm. But that's the way I look at it, in my opinion. And that's like a calm before the storm. I know I sound like I'm repeating myself a lot. I do apologize. Like I said, as I was saying, it sounds like it's a calm before the storm. Now, what's interesting about this, as far as the first story is concerned, like I mentioned, Chip does get his memories back, obviously, or at least enough of his memories and powers to know what needs to be done. And we also kind of see through these flashbacks him interacting with all the freedom fighters through different activities, like helping Rotor out by bringing him a wrench, learning how to cook by Antoine, dancing to some music with Amy, Cream and Cheese, reading a book with Sally and Nicole, playing music with Bunny. So very, very interesting to see him interacting with the characters there. As far as the second story goes, I think it was a little bit more on the lighthearted side, more of a kind of one of those. I guess if you wanted to look at it as an example, kind of more of a story that you would see as a 11-minute short in season 2 of Sonic Sat-AM, which have been more enjoyable in my opinion, as far as 11-minute shorts in that season were concerned. But yeah, basically very lighthearted, and everything. I like the fact that Sally wants to help out, but we also find out that the reason Sally wants to help out Lucy, is because it's more of a personal issue for her as well, because she didn't really get to know her mother but she only has vague memories of her. And what I find interesting about this is you get that silhouette of her mother, and it's almost in a similar design as to when we first meet Alicia at times. So, and that's from the old book. So it's kind of nice to know they're acknowledging Sally did have a mom, and I'm assuming it has to be Alicia. But I like how it was done in a silhouette so you don't see a facial feature or anything. I like that because silhouette-wise, it does show that it's kind of vague to Sally, that she can't really remember her mom that much. Now, it was interesting to also see that Rotor had a connection with his mom, but apparently his mother died. So, very interesting connection there. Hopefully, some of that will be played into in the future. I would love to see more of a background story, and a connection between Sally and getting to know more about her family's past. Hopefully, something might come out of that might be interesting for fans. I like the fact that we get to see these different side of the freedom fighters when Chip's reminiscing about how they've welcomed him in as basically a part of the team. I like the fact that we see things like Bunny singing. We don't see her singing, we don't hear it, but you can tell she's singing and she's playing a guitar, so obviously she knows how to sing some country. And I think that would be nice to see get explored more in the future as well. It's really interesting. So I'd like to see that get explored more. I like the interaction between Sally and Honey. I thought that's really funny. I mean, the fact that Sally makes a bargain with her to say, hey, basically makes a bargain with her to say, hey, you give us the table that you've reserved, and I'll let you do my whole wardrobe for my coronation, whenever that will be. And I like how she kind of alludes back to that when Rhoda asks her how she got the table, and she basically has to cheekily say, yeah, I'm going to have to make a very interesting call to my dad tomorrow and explain what's going on, or explain how this happened. So, yeah, I thought a special occasion, the second story special occasion, was very lighthearted, a very fun read, and can't wait to see more of that. Like I said, I think 280 and mostly the backup stories for 281 and 282, maybe with the exception of the main story, which is split into two parts for those issues, as well as 283 are going to be the calming before the storm. So overall, I enjoyed the issue, thought it was a great issue. Hopefully we'll get it physically in my hands. Maybe by today, maybe by next week, we'll find out. But I have to say, I have to give both stories an 8 out of 10. So basically 16 out of 20 overall. So not too bad. It helps flesh out the story a little bit more. Helps flesh out the characters even more so in this new self-retcon reboot, if you will. And get to know more about the backgrounds and families and all that, especially Sally and Rotor. The interaction with Chip and the Freedom Fighters, I like that. So overall, not too bad. And can't wait to see more. And that's all I have to say about it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Sorry this was in about 2, maybe 3 parts. I do apologize for that. Take your time in watching this, and I'll talk to y'all later.